Hello YouTubers, this is Ranger Rick and this is our final video on the Taurus PT111 Millennium Pro firearm, and on this video we're going to do a disassembly of the lower unit. So let's get started. You'll notice that there are two pins at the front of the guard here, and I've already removed one of them just so you wouldn't have to listen to the banging, okay? So the pin's basically there. So the next thing we're going to do is remove this second pin, and you could drive it out from either side. It makes no difference. So we're going to take our block of wood here and get it set up to drive out that other pin. So we'll get that lined up, get a hole pin punch. This is a 3/32 punch, and line that up and drive that right on through. Take our pin out, and you can see that there's our pin, and we'll just pull that the last little bit out. So there's our two pins, and that is basically all that holds this lower chassis, into the frame. And what we're going to do is we're going to tip the front of the chassis up. We're going to tip it up, and then we're going to slide it out. The back is set into the back, so we've got to tip it up a little bit and then move it forward, and that'll take this whole chassis out. Now there's two things that are going to come apart when we do that, so let me warn you. This safety latch is going to be one of the things that will fall out, and this pin that contains the slide latch pin, it will also fall out, in addition to this catch. So as we take this out, we just want to be aware that these things are going to come off very quickly. Below the safety, there's a ball bearing and a spring, and then there's just this spring that's in the front part. So I'm going to take an ice pick and go through the whole section here. You can kind of see that, and I'm just going to use that as leverage to pull the front up. So we'll move that out. Excuse me. You notice as I did this, the spring went ahead and came out. So we're going to go ahead and put that spring over there. I'm going to lift up a little bit more. And then we're going to slide this whole thing forward. Okay? So we'll bring that forward and bring the back part out. Okay, at this point the trigger is still in the trigger guard, so that's the last thing that we have to clear. Okay, and that's the lower. There's nothing in the lower there except now, so that can be wiped out and cleaned, and it'll be ready to go when we put it back together. The lower chassis here, the slide catch, it just comes straight out. This little tab is in this hole, but the main part's on this part that's right here, this little cylinder that sticks up. So that latch just comes right off of it. And then on the safety, if you'll go ahead and bring the safety down into position, you can bring the safety straight out at that point. Okay, that little latch there is the actual safety, and that's what catches. But the main thing I want you to notice is right here between the detent there's a ball bearing, and below that is a spring. So we're going to take that ball bearing out, and then we're also going to get the spring that's below that out. And again, an ice pick is a good thing to do that with. Okay, so we got a little tiny spring that's in there too. Okay, so those three pieces, that spring and that ball bearing and the safety, those all three are what come out there. And we're going to put all three of those in our little tray here that's magnetized to keep those stuff from running around. And of course that's our clasp. And at this point, the only thing left to take out is the trigger. Now the trigger actually is a C-shaped thing. It attaches this bar that rides to the back of the chassis, and then it goes inside and up, and you can actually see that it moves this tab back and forth here. So that's all one piece. So to take the spring out, there's a pin that holds it in place, and the pin is larger on the left side than it is the right side, so you drive it out from the right side. And you could just do this by hand. You just basically push it off from the right side, and you can see how that's got a tab to it, and you basically pull that just all the way out, and we'll set that aside so we don't lose it. Alright, at this point the trigger is free. It's just a matter at this point of rotating the trigger up towards you and then pulling that bar out. You can see where this tab and this tab fit in these holes. So it goes in there and rotates. Like so. So you rotate out and pull that up, and then that's free. And at that point, that's as far as you want to disassemble that. The only thing that's left is this little silver sear that's in the back of the firearm, and you don't want to disconnect this. How this comes apart is there's a L pin that sits here on the end, and you can just take that pin and pull it out. And I did that thinking, oh, this is no problem, this silver part's just going to fall right out, and I'll be able to get the spring, back in there real easily. Well, no, I pulled that pin out and the spring fell out, but this silver part stayed attached. And if you look very carefully where the safety hole is, you can look and see where it's hinged in the back here. And I didn't take it any further than that. Once I had the pin out and the spring out and that wouldn't come out, I didn't want to force it, because it's kind of wedged in there, and it does pivot, and there's two moving parts there. So my suggestion to you is that that's as far as you take it. You can clean it really well at this point. You can get all of the cracks and crevices. I hadn't cleaned this part of my gun since I had owned it, and I'd never had it apart, and it was really cruddy when I got into it. So you can just take and do all the normal cleaning that you normally do, and that gives you access to everything that you need to do to be able to clean it. So that's the disassembly. Okay, so you did take the L pin out and the spring fell out, but the silver part didn't come out. And now you want to get the spring back in there. Well, how do you do that? Well, the spring is basically pretty much straight on one end, and on the other end it's got a C shape to it. And so if you take that C shape and make the trough to where it goes up, so in other words it's going to be sprung and go forward and curl up, then you're going to get it correctly. So basically put the pin in, put it into the silver thing, put your thumb on it, put the spring in there underneath everything with the C shape forward and the little curly part facing up, and then with a pair of needle-nosed pliers reach in and grab the spring and pull it up enough to where you can run it through the coils there, and then at that point you'll have it back together. But again, my advice is don't take it apart, but if you do take it apart, that's the way to get it back together. Alright, let's reassemble our unit. The first thing we're going to do is take and put our trigger back in place. So again, you can see the trigger, and if you come in from the side, we're going to go down at an angle, go straight in, and then we're going to curl the front and the back into place. This front part, this back part goes up through the middle, the mid section goes through that hole, and then we're also going to pull the trigger just a little bit to where it kind of slides into place. And once it's in there, it'll be loose, but you can at that point line up the trigger pin. Again, that's the pin that has the little top to it, and you'll have to pull the trigger, put just a little bit of tension on it to get it correct. But we're going to take and go ahead and push that pin in. Line up these holes and hold it in place. and then just drive it on through. And that pin will go on down to where it's flush with the outside here. Alright, so then we've got the trigger in place. You can operate the trigger and you're going to see that it moves back and does everything correctly. So the next thing we're going to do is line up these two pieces on the front. We'll start with the safety, and we're going to take the spring of the safety, and we're going to go ahead and take and drop the spring in the little hole in the front here. And then we're going to take the ball bearing that goes with it and just set that on top of it. And then we're going to take the safety. Normally it sits like that. We'll go ahead and set it in through the hole, push it all the way down, and then we're going to rotate the safety up into place. And once it's up in place like that, it'll pretty much hold the spring and the ball bearing in the correct location. So that's good to go. The next thing we're going to do is put in the catch and the catch spring. So we'll put the catch in first. Again, there's a tab that goes in the hole, and then the part that goes in the cylinder here. And so we'll put that in place, and then we're going to put the catch spring right in this little slot that it's designed to go in. And once you get it in place, you pretty much by finger can go ahead and pull it down, and it will lock in place, and it will lock and hold that catch in place. And really those are the two things that you need to do. So what's left to do is to slide this whole mechanism into the gun. And what happens is when it slides in and catches in the back, and then the front will go down. So what we want to do is make sure that both this front part and the safety go in and go inside the well here. So I'll put the trigger in first. So we got the trigger in place, and then we're going to squeeze the safety just a little bit to get the rear end down, and you can see that it's in the correct place. And then we're going to slide it back, so you can see it's up against the back here. And once that is in place, we're just going to move the whole chassis down into position. And at that point, you can see that we've got the holes for the two pins lined up. And then at that point, it's just a matter of driving those two extra pins in place. So we'll bring our little block over here and set this in place. And again, they can go in from either side. Makes no difference. We'll drive them down. Get them pretty close, and then we'll use a punch to do that last little bit. Alright, and there we go. So the safety comes down, trigger works, safety goes up, blocks, and everything's functional. So that's the disassembly and reassembly of the lower. I hope these 3 videos have been helpful to you on the Taurus PT111 Pro. And until next time, be safe and shoot straight.